The skin of a goddess is an impeccably polished lie. We encounter the Léché finish, the clinical erasure of the brushstroke, not as mere mastery, but as a sublimated barrier against the chaos of the psyche. Alexandre Cabanel's world is a sanctuary of luminous asphyxiation, where the ideal serves as a mask for the abject lurking beneath. Now, we deconstruct the layers of this radiant glaze to listen to the suppressed id, the silent vibration trapped within the stillness of the canvas. This is not a mythological genesis, but the sophisticated birth of the reified object. The sea is domesticated, its fluid weight evaporated into a sterile, decorative texture. The waves are no longer water, but an ornate pedestal for the porcelain form. Here, Eros is stripped of its raw vitality and replaced by a sanitized fetishism of the ideal. The facade of divine perfection serves as a mythological alibi for the panoptic gaze of the 19th century elite. The raised arm, a choreographed occlusion of the eyes, performs a state of passive availability. The gaze is a deliberate void, a hollow vessel into which the spectator projects the suppressed subconscious. The putti floating in the ether are not celestial messengers, but compositional punctuation marks. Their weightless, buoyant forms serve as accomplices in this aestheticized commodification of the divine. While Venus offered a passive void, Cleopatra embodies the sovereign gaze, an active yet chillingly detached exercise of optical power. The sanitized mythology has dissolved into a theatre of power. Here, beauty is no longer an ideal, but a prerogative of judgment, a visual manifestation of the absolute will. A profound material dissonance governs the composition. The iridescent sheen of silk and the tactile softness of the leopard collide with the raw, agonizing corporeality of the condemned, spectral figures fading into the background. The perfect profile reveals not malice, but sovereign indifference. To this gaze, the dying subjects are reduced to mere biological variables, data points in an aesthetic experiment of lethality. The leopard at her feet functions as a theriomorphic alter ego. Both predator and queen observe the spectacle of suffering with the same innate, terrifying tranquility. Beauty functions here as the ultimate instrument of Thanatos. It proves that the highest academic grace can seamlessly inhabit the coldest architecture of political will. Descending from the oculocentric power of Venus and Cleopatra, we enter a landscape of grief. Cabanel subverts his mastery of the human form to document its impending annihilation. The textile, losing all structural integrity, clings to her limbs like melting water, a visual metaphor for a corporeality already ceasing to be. The feverish pallor of her skin collides with the fractured, harsh textures of the rocky abyss. She is no longer a deity ruling nature, but an entity being consumed by inanimate silence. This is the aesthetics of disembodiment. Echo emerges as the anti-Venus. If Venus was a vessel awaiting a soul, Echo is a soul violently stripped of its vessel, condemned to become a mere acoustic reflection of the other. The expression, suspended between a gasp and a silent cry, is the visual registration of the loss of the self. Cabanel paints not a subject, but the haunting echo of a vanished existence. We arrive at the epicenter of Cabanel's aesthetic subversion. The polished surface fractures, not from an external blow, but from an internal eruption of the suppressed id. This is no longer a study of defeat, but the aesthetics of defiance. The flawlessly articulated musculature pulsates with existential tension. It is not a body in repose, but a kinetic form coiled with metaphysical rage. The diagonal trajectory of the wing leads to a partially obscured face. A single tearful eye, bloodshot and burning with resentment, serves as the impossible detail that shatters the academic facade. This ocular defiance marks the return of the gaze. Under the Panoptic supervision of 19th century traditionalism, the figure refuses to remain a passive object of observation. He glares back, interrogating the spectator who dared to judge him. He stands as the anti-ideal. Through this profound empathy for the ultimate exile, Cabanel acknowledges that the highest grace is hollow without the pulse of desire, even if that desire necessitates eternal isolation. The cycle of suppression reaches its teleological end, the fall. The porcelain veneer of the Venus fractures under the crushing gravity of original sin. The bodies of Adam and Eve, no longer buoyant, no longer ethereal, sink into the material world, bowed beneath the weight of shame. A brutal dissonance separates the celestial from the terrestrial. The divine decree, fluid, commanding, and vertical, clashes with the human trajectory, which is fragmented, horizontal, and inherently chaotic. In the subterranean shadows, the serpent's gaze ruptures the fourth wall to mock the spectator. This cynical witness confirms that the id, unleashed in the fallen angel, has irrevocably contaminated the purity of the ideal. The Léché finish undergoes a final transfiguration. It no longer masks but accentuates the Geworfenheit, the state of being thrown from the stasis of myth into the cold silence of history. In the celebration of form, the gallery finds that every impeccable surface is in fact a silent monument to an irretrievable loss. The cycle of suppression finally concludes. From the sterile paradise of Venus to the harsh gravity of exile, this meticulous surface completes its final mutation. It is no longer a shield of perfection, but a transparent veil revealing our Geworfenheit. The myth has evaporated, leaving an absolute void, where the naked vulnerability of our fragile existence is exposed. These impeccably polished surfaces are not a triumph of beauty, but a noble ossification of the human sorrow and rage imprisoned behind the radiance. The silence returns, but the Léché persists. To gaze into Cabanel's seamless void is to witness the polished crisis of an era. This is not the recovery of the ideal, but the birth of a despair that was always already ours.